sharing this fireside chat with His Excellency, the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Hailemariam Desalegn and Mr. Tahir Gözel, who is the founder of the Tahir Gözel Initiative for Development. I'm going to give a bit of perspective on what we're going to be talking about today. It's going to be a very fluid and free-flowing conversation, but we're going to work on the perspectives of government and the private sector to explore how industries and businesses can jointly develop workforces needed for climate transition and a just climate transition to net zero, but also what prosperity can be brought out of the challenges and the risks that we face. So we're very fortunate to have two world leaders in their respective fields. We're also going to have to dive into how we think very differently. Today's not going to be a conversation about what we're reading online or where the data is showing, but how we pull that apart and dive into perspectives and really bring that blue sky thinking to the challenges that we face, but the opportunities that can be delivered. Now, this is not about taking the best we can from a bad situation. This is about acknowledging that we are facing true dire consequences if we don't deal with climate change, but also recognizing that that requires investment. There is costs to that, but there's huge opportunity to take people out of poverty, drive prosperity in countries which are at the forefront of the climate impacts, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, and here in Central Asia, where water is an extreme issue, access to water. So I'm going to give a bit more detail on our two esteemed guests, and we'll dive straight into the conversation. I know they don't need any introduction, but I want to remind us all of the incredible work that they have done. So His Excellency was the second Executive Prime Minister of Ethiopia, who served between 2012 and 2018. And prior to that, he's held a series of high-level government positions and offices. After leaving office, His Excellency co-founded and is the chairperson of the Hailemariam and Roman Foundation, which focuses on mother and child healthcare, prevention of non-communicable diseases, nutrition, and climate-smart agriculture and conservation-based ecotourism. Currently, in addition to chairing Trademark Africa's board, which I have the pleasure of sitting on, he is also serving as on the board of AGRA, Tourism Ethiopia, the ICG, the International Crisis Group, the Brenthurst Foundation, and he's on the Global Steering Committee for the Campaign for Nature. So huge depth of experience that we get to dive into today. So, massive opportunity for us. Your Excellency, we are delighted to welcome you here today. And over the course of your distinguished career, the Ethiopian economy grew tremendously. But it was quite clear that from the outset, you recognized the challenges that climate was going to pose for the people of Ethiopia. You drove green initiatives, particularly myself involved in one, planting many, many trees in Ethiopia, but also being part of an industry whose future was going to be driven by green energy and energy that didn't emit carbon emissions. So a strategy which I came to be part of later in your tenure, so clearly one that you'd been thinking of for many, many years. Could you perhaps give us some background and perspective to the challenges that climate has impacted Ethiopia from the role of Prime Minister and the previous executive offices you held, but also how you saw that was driving opportunities for change in Ethiopia?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Dominic. And I would like also to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on this very pertinent topic on opportunities that the current situation we are in with regards to climate change can create to jobs, decent jobs to our young people. You know, Africa is a very young continent, and so we need to make this opportunity of the climate change to bring decent jobs to our young people. I think it is possible to do that if we properly invest in a very innovative way to curb the situation. For sure, climate change is a daunting challenge. It's not an idea or a theory now. It is something which is biting us, and we need to address it. While addressing that, it's not also a concern, but it is an opportunity as well. Because we are latecomers as Africa, and we have huge opportunity not to repeat the past mistakes other continents have made in their development course. One example is we can modernize our agriculture, which is very climate sensitive and climate smart. Like, for example, we need drought resistant seeds in agriculture, and that calls for innovation. And in that sense, because we have young, educated youth, they can involve in producing, because 60% of global arable land is in Africa, which has not been utilized. So we can invest in agriculture with our young people involved in it in a modern, climate smart way. And opportunity is there because it's a very digitally connected society at this time. And young people are very much versatile on digital technology, and they can use precision agriculture, which is modern agriculture that can produce and export. So I think this is one of the areas. But we can also move into high-tech, investments using energy which is very clean. My own country, as you mentioned, Professor Dominic, we are engaged in producing green energy from hydro, from solar, from geothermal, and even from wind. So this is a huge opportunity. I mean, now, obviously, we have to go ahead of what the global community is thinking at this time and acting. Like, for example, the European Union has, a lots of restriction that is coming because of the climate issue and the environment issue. But we have to be ahead of what the policies are being taken outside by using our green energy and green production so that we can make it as a competitive investment in Africa. Yes, there is restriction, but we have also opportunity to go ahead of it and utilize that market very well. Of course, we can also move into, like, for example, in agriculture itself, cheaper way of producing fertilizer, like green hydrogen and green ammonia, which is, of course, there is a need for maturing this technology very well, but those who started it as reaping the benefit of having green ammonia, which is cheaper than the natural. So I think these are all opportunities we have to look into, creating jobs to our young people. Climate adaptation, because Africa is the least contributing but the most affected continent, and we should be, while asking or pleading to the global community to support Africa and developing countries, but we cannot sit idle by just looking for aid to come and support us. But we have to proactively act in this regard, and I believe we can do that. And the results now show that Africa can move very fast and accelerate way to bring about this change and transformation to happen. So in this regard, our example shows that, the afforestation programs we are in now, in a massive way in my country, Ethiopia, the billions of trees being planted, and we are moving that into productive afforestation program with agro plantations. Like avocado is the one which is liked by many countries now, and Ethiopia is exporting that commodity. But young people can grow it in a modern, technology-based way to bring about a quality avocado that can be produced in Ethiopia and exported to China, to Europe, to other countries in the globe. So I think we have to also increase the intra-African trade, which is nascent, and we have to move fast in that regard as well with African Continental Free Trade Area that helps African countries to trade with each other. Like my own country, coffee is something which is traded very well, but there is a niche. If it is climate smart, then you can get more money out of it than the traditional one. So I think that calls for young people. Not my fathers can do that because they are old, they can't understand easily the technologies, but young people can do it at this moment. So we can mention lots of opportunities, within the challenge of the climate change we are seeing now. Yes, we cannot undermine the challenge we are facing with the climate change if we do not proactively act on innovative ways to help this happen.
Indeed. And this leads us very well, Your Excellency, for me to formally introduce Mr. Gözel. Mr. Gözel is a business leader, entrepreneur, and philanthropist who is, from my perspective, what I've seen in the region of Central Asia, has driven from the traditional industries which have underpinned the economy here to to green positive sectors, the forefront of some of the technologies that His Excellency speaks about. And through the Tahir Gözel Initiative for Development, Mr. Gözel is a leading champion in sharing the knowledge and skills that he's been able to develop in smart technologies around agriculture, agrotech, and in some of what a lot of people may not be aware of in a very dry part of the world, being Central Asia. So similar challenges to Africa, but slightly ahead in the development of the technologies, of which I'm hoping today we can share some of those ideas with His Excellency to drive that job creation and prosperity that we talk about. And I know as well Mr. Gözel is a very keen sportsman and doing a lot to support communities through sports, health and fitness. So driving less consumption of foods which are not so great for health and planet, but making communities far more prosperous in their own health agendas. So Mr. Gözel, thank you for being here. We're very excited to hear some of the insights and the reflections from His Excellency, and perhaps you could share some of the experiences that you've seen and how we can intertwine those paths to prosperity and job creation in parts of the world where climate is having the biggest impacts.
Professor Dominic, Your Excellency, great privilege to be here with you. I want to thank ODI for this exceptional opportunity. Indeed, my country, Azerbaijan, is a fossil-producing country, and that's where my traditional background work started. I was a director in a petroleum trading company. But I realized that this is not my life story. This is not the life that I want to live. And I closed my company. And I sought projects and ideas that would connect me to nature, connect me to farmers, to the reality of life. Because I realized in Azerbaijan, 1.2 million people live in agriculture, with agriculture. Of course, the question was, what would I do in agriculture? There is the classical agricultural model, which I think today we have to really leave that behind us. It's open field, low density production, requires tremendous amount of space, tremendous resources of water. Imagine canals of water flowing open for thousands of kilometers. By the time they arrive at you, it's 60% already evaporated in a country that already has water stress. And we went and looked around the world, and we decided to bring the very modern Dutch greenhouse technology to Azerbaijan. And we did our first 10 hectare. It was a tremendous amount of investment compared to open field. It is true that if you want prosperity in agriculture, you have to be a long-term investor. And you have to be a deep investor, i.e. you have to look at the sector very deeply, seriously, study it, understand the local conditions, and build something that lasts. After 2 years, we were getting 7 times the production kilogram compared to the open field. We realized we're saving 95% water. It's a miracle, 95% water. We were saving 85% pesticides. Imagine you're producing with 85% of pesticides. In fact, in some parts of our greenhouse, we didn't need to use pesticide at all. We were growing organic. We were heating our greenhouses in the winter, capturing the carbon that was leaving, giving the carbon back to the plants because it's a closed system. The plants take that carbon dioxide, transform it into oxygen, and that oxygen would leave the greenhouse. So we realized that if we manage to grow this business, this model, on size and scale, that we could do something incredible. So something that started at 10 hectares, every year the company grew. We did not take any profits out. We have been reinvesting profits back in since 15 years now. Almost never took any dividend out. But by now, we have a green size that is half the size of country of Monaco, around 1 million square meter. And we're always searching for the next frontier. So during one of our conversations, one of our middle managers says, we talk about sustainability in a new way. I wish we could produce greenhouses with thermal energy. And we took that as our challenge, Professor. And the latest greenhouses we built in Turkey are with absolutely zero carbon production with thermal energy material. So what I want to say is there's so much local resources that if you understand, you can apply to. And I suggest that Africa, Ethiopia, the same thing. Businessmen in that country have to look at agriculture as a deep science, as a very serious science, understand the implications of what does it mean to have an open field where your livelihood depends on the weather conditions that you cannot predict, versus having something that is literally indestructible. Almost. It can withstand anything. And our model has proven in Azerbaijan, the place where we used to have our greenhouses used to be called the Valley of the Snakes. There was nothing. And now that valley produces 20% of Azerbaijan's tomatoes. It's an almost semi-desert, arid land. It's incredible by saving 95% water. So it's proven that it can be done. It is possible.
So we're seeing through technology, not just the advancement of productivity, but the efficiencies of one, driving your costs down, but two, driving your impact down. And that's something that, from my perspective, having built many factories throughout the world, producing garments, including in Ethiopia, a lot of people would always question, why am I focusing on the climate identifiable impacts? And we're going back 10, 15 years. People struggled to understand that there was a cost to water. You know, particularly when you're living in, say, Sri Lanka, where there is a lot of water around, but the water doesn't stay. And there's a cost to processing it, cleaning it. So by driving your water consumption down, your electricity consumption down, your idle times of your trucks, efficiencies in your logistics, we're starting to see the byproducts of profits being driven to reinvest back into further efficiencies. When Your Excellency, did you first see businesses understand that efficiencies were not just a driver for the bottom line, but they understood it was a driver for a better planet?
Yeah. I think the whole idea is, our systems are interconnected. When you improve somewhere, in some place, then you see that the impact is far-reaching to the other sectors as well. So if, for example, I am chairing the Trademark Africa now, together with you, and we see that the improvement we are making in Mombasa port to export, like, for example, some of the products we see, moving through that port by reducing the time and efficiency, like it has been taking 3 months, but now only 7 days. So it's a huge improvement in the system itself. And that means, the whole value chain has improved and creates lots of energy for investors to invest in. That all means when you invest in more this kind of, efficient companies, then you create lots of jobs, because still Africa is in a very low stage of development, and we have to pass through the ladder very quickly. So we need huge investment to be invested in. That all calls for more jobs to be created when we increase effectiveness and efficiency. So that's how it is. So I think the precision agriculture, which my colleague was talking about, is something which Africa also has to see, because water is a very scarce commodity, and even land, which is abundant in Africa, but it won't continue like this, so we have to effectively use it. So whatever efficiency and effectiveness we add into the system, it all means we are creating values, and we are attracting more investment into our systems, and we can create more jobs.
Indeed.
So it's very essential in this regard.
One of the things, you got me thinking about trademark, and I'd like both of your comments on this. One of the things we're seeing in supermarkets in Europe is that they're saying they don't want to air freight any fruit or vegetables anymore.
Yeah.
Understand the thinking, and understand how, in marketing terms, this is a good story, it's a good narrative. But when supermarkets in Europe announce that they won't put avocados on planes, I support the initiative. But when it's not possible to get avocados onto boats in Africa,
yeah,
it throws the system completely. So I want to get an understanding, Mr. Gözel, from your side in the private sector, and your side, Chair, from a governance perspective. We are seeing decisions made of which, in Europe, it seems very easy and straightforward, and it seems like the right thing. But actually, it is costing lives and livelihoods and putting economies back. So how do we balance that conversation as a producer to have the consumer understand, yes, we want to make sure that the way we get goods to you is the most efficient as possible. But if you turn it off today, my farms go and my people without work. How would you approach those conversations? And apologies for throwing it out there, because I know these concepts might cause offence to those that consume avocados easily and don't even think about how it gets on the shelf, and say, of course it should come on a boat. But when the reality is that East Africa can hardly get fresh fruit and vegetables because we don't have cold storage, that puts not 5,000, maybe hundreds of thousands of people's livelihoods at risk, driving the climate impact even further, despite us wanting to do steps with goodwill. So from your perspective, Mr. Gözel, and then we'll go to His Excellency, how do we have those conversations of transition to understanding efficiencies take time to gain?
I will answer this from my business experience. The retail chains like to consolidate their suppliers to fewer and fewer numbers. The less suppliers who can deliver most product is better for them in terms of management. Which means what? Which means there are less suppliers, but with negotiating power. Why do they have that negotiating power with the retailer? Let's not talk about the consumers, I will talk about the retailer. It's because they have a good post-harvest technology, i.e., they can consolidate a large amount of products from many farmers, which are small farmers, have a center where all these thousands of farmers deliver products to a center. There's a sorting machine, and today these sorting machines are very clever. With AI, you can teach them if they see any defects, any shape, any color, it sorts them in a different quality. And then when you go to these retail chains, as a qualified, branded item that has a standard quality deliverable to them, I think there is your negotiating power you're at a position where they will listen to you. However, if you go in a fragmented sense, you are insignificant, your numbers are insignificant, you're trying desperately to find, that is why I think if a country like Ethiopia, any country in Africa, wants to be able to have a foothold in the European market, they need to invest in their post-harvest and what we call, they do this in cooperatives as well. It doesn't have to be a single company. So a cooperative of farmers, 200 farmers can come together, say, you know what, we'll all put together something. Okay, we don't have the money to make an AI machine now, we will do it visually. We will pack this under one brand, and we'll make this one delivery company into Europe. Once your numbers are large, then you will find new means of logistic, new means of negotiating the whole channel, as well as with the retail and to the final consumer. That would be my answer to you from my business experience.
So, Your Excellency, please, from your perspective as government, but also as a Pan-Africanist, seeing those challenges and how these decisions impact Africa.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with Gonzalez on this issue. We have examples. We have regulations for outgrowing schemes. We have regulations how to consolidate produce in Africa from smallholder farmers, especially from production up to the whole value chain. We need to have young people involved in it because the quality issue is very essential. The phytosanitary issue is very essential, and it cannot be done by smallholder farmers at the current stage. Yeah. So we have to improve those things with technologies involved in it, as was said. And of course, proper policy from the government side, supporting young people to have proper regulation and trainings and capacity building, that all be done by the government. So I think this is a public-private partnership program. It's not just a private sector, but the public sector also has to understand and support the process. As you mentioned, for example, the flour sector, you know, in East Africa, both Kenya and Ethiopia are exporting flour to Europe through the Belgian and the Dutch auction systems. In this regard, now there is a provision that has come already that if it is air freight, then they are not going to accept it. So what's the option we have? It's a sea freight. If it is that, then again, until with all inefficiencies in the value chain, we can't export to Europe with the quality which is we do in air freight.
Indeed.
So we have to improve the whole chain in this regard, as was said, consolidating this process together with a private and public partnership. So now the improvement in efficiency and effectiveness in the trading system with cool chain, proper cool chain, and all those precisions needed is very important to trade with Europe.
Indeed.
Yeah, and our coffee, for example.
The best.
The coffee has to be without afforestation. That is the regulation that EU has now set in place. And so how can we prove that this coffee is produced in an area where it is not degraded or it's not deforested? So that calls for precision agriculture that helps to mature and showcase. And you know, it's very costly for the compliance. So if you don't consolidate it, the compliance issue becomes very costly. Yeah. A fragmented farm doesn't work. So it is a necessity now for us to make it more efficient, but a concerted effort by governments, non-governmental organizations, donor communities, and the farmers, especially young farmers, together that we can cope to the climate issues and the regulations and the restrictions that are put in place at this moment.
Indeed. And Your Excellency, one of the things I'd like to think about, we've touched upon some of the areas of where Azerbaijan, and particularly through the innovations of Mr. Gözel's enterprises, have driven efficiencies which positively benefit people and planet. But in Africa, we have done some incredible work, as you said, at the front line of the climate crisis, but we've also done incredible work in driving those efficiencies in supply chains, 3 months to 7 days. 3 months from Rwanda to get your paperwork, to get your goods cleared, to get it on a boat out of Mombasa. Now it's less than 7 days. We've done incredible work in the region, and I know Ethiopia, with its dry ports and being a landlocked country, has faced many challenges, yet is able to bring goods in and out for a population of 110 million people to the rest of the world, and a growing population. So we have examples of huge success, particularly in East Africa. But we also have, I don't want to use the word We have challenges here, however, in Central Asia, moving goods from China through to Europe. So I'd like to talk about, actually, Mr. Gözel's hugely honoured us with some of his experiences in agriculture, but perhaps we could share with Mr. Gözel some of our experiences in trade and logistics in landlocked countries, in regions which don't have those ports and access to borders, and how that's driven prosperity by bringing the cost of trade down, how that's driven jobs, got people out of poverty. Because this region, Azerbaijan, has been very successful in logistics, but its neighbours, with all due respect, not so much so. But there's a huge opportunity to decarbonise this trade corridor. Perhaps you could give some reflections on as you helped Ethiopia develop in its trade in a landlocked country.
Exactly. I think we use mainly the Djibouti port for our exports, and in that corridor, I think one of the things is we introduced a cool chain system which didn't exist. And with investors coming from Netherlands and other places, we introduced a cool chain system which created a huge opportunity for our young people to get jobs there. So I think introducing those kind of things has helped us a lot. And we do have dry ports to make it, multimodal transport system rather than just unimodal system which we were using. And that also created, huge opportunity in this regard. And we reduced, all the bureaucratic bottlenecks and red tapes that has, hindered the efficient and effective movement of goods from Addis to Djibouti, and even from, other regional capitals to Addis and to Djibouti. But we also introduced a green transport mechanisms.
Yeah.
We have a railway system which is connected to Djibouti, which is electric driven from green source.
Yeah.
So again, it is climate resilient, but also cheap electric source, which also reduces the cost of business in Ethiopia. Now I can give you an example. We sell in 4 cents per kilowatt hour in Ethiopia, while those who are using diesel power generated, they sell 16 cents, 15 cents, which is 6-7 times the cost of production of electricity. So I think you can see in the value chain there are a number of improvements that can be done that can help, make it more efficient and effective.
Well, indeed. And as in a region which has been highly driven, its wealth has been highly driven by oil and gas. We now see in the transport sectors, even in the marine sectors, movement to hydrogen-fueled shipping. We're seeing a number of technologies come through which will drive the biggest container ships in the world, or get trucks moving across borders. So we have this challenge at the moment of efficiencies at borders, making sure trucks are not sitting there idly burning fuel. But that when the fuel goes away and we look at electric-powered trucks or hydrogen-powered buses, we're still consuming energy. We don't want to waste energy in whatever form it's generated. How do you see that transitioning happening here, Mr. Gözel, in respect of Azerbaijan and the region moving away from oil and this transition to a greener future, and the fuels that we're seeing come through that are going to drive that? I mean, from your perspective, how is that adapted? Because we've heard from His Excellency how Ethiopia has set a bold plan on energy, as have many other African countries, including Namibia. But those plans were never to build coal power plants. They were to build hydrogen, perhaps nuclear in the future, or thermal, geothermal. How's that transitioning happening here?
Well, if you look at the middle corridor, what we call, at one end of the node is China and the other is Europe. Imagine, and you're right in the middle. The opportunity is tremendous. This is the only non-sanctioned route from China to Europe. So opportunity is there, tremendous. However, unfortunately, I think, practically speaking, this is one of our Achilles heel. The reason being, we have very number of neighboring countries here with quite different customs and traditions. We are very, very close countries with close mentality, and they don't, unfortunately, get along so well with each other. Neither is there a will. It's slowly dissolving this thing. It's all coming out. But to me, I think it is the human factor that is slowing the evolution of this greening and speeding up the corridor. It's very challenging from China to Kyrgyzstan with its own unique challenges, with all these different countries allied to different parts of the world, one to Russia, the other one towards China, one towards West, one towards... So I think there's a lot of challenges here. What every country is trying to do now is trying to solve their own problem within, increase the efficiency of each country is working, trying to do within itself. So they're electrifying everything within their borders, and hopefully the hope is here that one day we will all sit down, all our neighbors, and actually connect. Yes, but it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. And fortunately, Your Excellency, in Africa, I feel there is really good alignment on the challenges. Sometimes the goal is set before the reality, but Africa is, and the people that I've had the pleasure of working with across the continent, has always been resilient to change. You know, it is at the forefront of the impacts of climate, but it is at the forefront of, as we've touched upon, understanding what those opportunities may be to bring prosperity. How, in your previous roles as chair at AU or COMESA and other institutions, have you been able to, despite differences of opinions and different views in governance, Africa is really starting to unify on its trade, the AFCFTA, and you've played a key role in that. What was the driving forces? What could we share with our friends here in the region to integrate better on those trade platforms?
Thank you, Professor Dominic. I think when I was chair of the African Union in 2012, that was when we initiated the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And after 6 years, we were able to reach to an agreement that is the largest trading bloc globally. Yeah. I think we started in a decent way to implement the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And it is going, you know, I'm not so happy with the speed it goes, but still we are on the right track.
Yeah.
The thing is, I understood from my own experience in Ethiopia, when smallholder farmers have a bumper harvest, then immediately the market falls.
Yeah.
And if we can't trade with each other and also export in an efficient way, then obviously there will not be any growth and progress in our agriculture sector. That's where I understood that trade is the most important tool to help integrate smallholder farmers to the global community and also to the national markets. So AFCFTA is one of the landmark decisions that our leaders have done. So that's where we have opportunity, but we have to accelerate it as much as we can. And that needs a political commitment, and I hope our leaders will be up to it at this moment. But otherwise, yes, that decision was very essential and will continue to push along that line.
Well, we're certainly seeing in the countries in Africa that are able to trade under AFCFTA, we're already seeing for the first time Ghana buying tea from Kenya, Ghana buying rice from Nigeria instead of Vietnam. I mean, who would have thought that the Ghanaians weren't buying Kenyan tea? They were buying tea that was probably from Kenya, blended in London, and then shipped all the way back. I mean, this is the other thing for me where I love to remind people, efficiencies in trade bring down carbon. So if Ethiopia is growing coffee, shipping it to Italy to be roasted, and then putting it on a boat back to Durban to be drunk, that's not efficient. By driving direct trade for Ethiopia to bring in the values for Kenya, Ghana, where the value addition is created not just in the farm, but in the processing, the packaging, the marketing, we don't only just bring prosperity to the producing countries, we reduce carbon emissions. For me, it's a win-win. And the Western, Italy shouldn't be upset that Lavazza will be being roasted in Ethiopia, because it actually has the EU setting its targets to bring down carbon. It can drive prosperity, bring carbon down, and be an even bigger brand on a continent where markets are saturated in the further developed countries. For me, I like to think of it as so simplistic, but the reality is we get value addition in the region, whether it's Central Asia, whether it's Africa, we bring people out of prosperity and we drive carbon emissions down. And we're seeing African countries grasp this. Do you think the rest of the world is starting to grasp the importance of this too?
I think there is a need for more advocacy in this regard. I hope this platform itself can help us in doing so. But Africa has to add values to its produce than just sell it raw, which is not acceptable at all. And I think the whole idea of African Continental Free Trade Area is the rule of origin, which helps us to originate the value creation in the continent itself. I think that's where we have to move.
Correct.
You know, you invested in my country. Thank you for that. The whole idea is to add value in my own country. Our cotton has been going directly to, European countries and to China without being value added. But now we are producing textile and garment in Ethiopia and exporting to United States and other countries. And the major sourcers are now investing in Ethiopia. So I think this is a big achievement, and we have to continue in that line.
Well, and it's still crazy to me that parts of Africa grow cotton. It then goes to China to be spun, and then it comes back to Africa to be stitched, and then goes on a boat to the US. Once again, add the value in Africa, reduce the carbon, bring the jobs.
Yes.
And yeah, Mr. Gözel, it must be a very compelling opportunity for you as an investor. You're no longer just investing in one African country. If you come and invest in Ethiopia or Namibia or Kenya, you're investing in the entire continent now. You're given access to a market of over 1 billion people. The world's 25% of the world's future population will be on the beautiful continent of Africa. I mean, that must as well be a huge appealing opportunity for investors like yourself, which are expanding beyond the region, taking those expertise. I mean, if I said to you 10 years ago, you invest in Kenya, you can only sell in Kenya, perhaps you'd say no. But now if I say to you, you can invest in Kenya, you can sell to the whole of Africa, I'm assuming that changes your perspectives, but please.
Professor Dominic, when we had a meeting with Commonwealth, and I went there to understand more about Africa. As you know, Commonwealth has many African countries under its arm. And it became very clear soon to me that from all the know-hows that I have, the one that I think Africa needs most is seed breeding. It is unbelievable to me that the world's giant seed companies, they sell millions of seeds to Africa. There is not a single seed breeding station in Africa.
It's terrible.
This is beyond my comprehension. And I tell this to my African brothers, sisters, countries. You need a seed that loves your soil. You need a seed that loves your sun, that loves your water, because your water is not my water. It's not Dutch water. You are right now buying seeds from Holland, from America, but your water is not American water. The constitution is different. PhD is different. The boron, the salt content is different. So you're bringing an alien seed that does not know where it is, what it's doing there, doesn't have a root there. And all you need to do is set up a seed breeding station. It's a beautiful journey, because to make a local seed, you need 9 generations of seed. And the whole process, it really is extraordinary. When you put the first generation and you watch from this generation of 2,000 plants, which ones lacked this place, Your Excellency, we will watch. Oh, we will see this one thrived. This one is happy here. We pick that as the next generation father. Then we choose a mother. And after 9 generations, you have a local seed that is adapted to the climate, to the heat, that is resistant to the local disease. To the local, everywhere has its own disease. You may not have brown rugose virus in Africa now that we have here. So we realize it's a grand opportunity. Similarly, Africa is a place where, with very simple technical introduction of very simple technologies, you can create wonders. Simply drip irrigation. Just sell honest, honorable drip irrigation pipes. Educate the farmer. Very system irrigation automation. Very system, very basic. Sell it. Sell it as a wholesaler. Go to the farmer, say, look, do you know what? I'll give this to you and I'll buy your produce from you. Don't pay me for this. It's free. I'm gifting it to you. When you make tomatoes, just sell me your tomatoes. You're earning money while you're selling, if it's reasonable.
Yeah.
You're buying and you're reselling.
Yeah.
So it really, you're absolutely right. Africa is a golden opportunity. What do we need? We need business people who are not thieves, who are not there to take,
Yes.
who are wise enough to understand, if I am going there, I have to build my castle. I have to build something that will remain there forever and will come and say, government, hello, I'm here with a good heart, with an investment. Please help me. I want a PPL with you. I want a private-private partnership. This is what I want to do. I don't know the workforce. Give me this, give me that. I'm here to stay. I want to make money here. But after 10 years, 15 years, when I've built all this empire, when I've built all these facilities, and now it's a cash machine, and the cash generated from this will just keep on growing. That's how we did it here. That's all.
Yeah, we need, the world needs, Africa needs investors that can drive that change.
We need people like Mr. Gonzalez. Please come and invest in Africa, and rest assured, I just invite you. This is very important for us, for our young people, and you are very much instrumental. I like your words, and we need people like yourself that can invest in social, as a social enterprise. God bless you. Thank you.
I think the biggest question, Your Excellency and Mr. Gözel, is where will the tomato taste best? Is it going to be an Azeri tomato? Is it going to be an Ethiopian tomato? Under this method, where will the world's greatest tasting tomato be? I know, for me, I think it will be in the soil of Africa, but it will need your expertise to beautify and help us generate. We're coming to a close. I'd just like to share a few reflections, but before I do, Mr. Gözel, perhaps a couple in closing remarks from you, and maybe around your passion of wanting to drive, and I say it with a smile, Azerbaijan's best tomato, when you had so many other opportunities. Tell us just, you've spoken so passionately today, tell us your dreams and desires for this world to become a better, more prosperous place with more people in jobs, and how we're going to do that by driving carbon down. Please, a few closing comments for you, Mr. Gözel.
I think it all starts with a genuine passion. I'll tell you what's my passion today in my world. I thought to myself, how can I stop all the wars in the world? I said, maybe I can do that with a tasty tomato. If I made a tomato so tasty, people woke up in the morning, they said, oh my God, this is the tomato that my grandmother used to give to me. I will connect it to his own soul and start a beautiful day. And maybe for that day, he will do something good for the next person. I seriously joke not. We made the idea of creating a tasty tomato a passion. And we invested $5 million into this R&D of how do you create a tasty tomato. Because to create taste, it means you have volatile chemicals. It means you need genetic diversity, a biodiversity that doesn't exist in the current seeds that are sold in the market. It means you have to have a South American variation, mix an African tomato, mix with that to create that genetic diversity. As you know, nature appreciates marriage of long-distance genetics. That something beautiful comes out of it. It's really as simple as that. It's going with a clear mind, clear objective, trusting in yourself, being very good in your analytics, in your expectations, and creating it. And the joy of being with the public, with the people, raising them. I'll tell you one thing. If I go to Africa, the first thing I will say to African farmers is, please buy more expensive seeds.
Yeah.
Don't go for the cheapest seed. It's a lie. This seed is $10 more expensive, but you lose 5 kilo of production. Go for higher, not super expensive, not the Dutch variety, but educate them. And how do you do that? Well, you give free samples. Hello, sir. Please try this on the corner of your farm. So if you are if you are patient, if you are there with an attitude to give and not to take.
Correct.
Once you want to give, there's a passion that comes with it.
Indeed.
And from that, you have a viral effect. Everyone knows you in a while.
You
Because
pay it
this
forwards.
man has come to give, this company. And that is how you succeed. You go there to give.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gözel. Thank you so much. Your Excellency, thank you for being here. Please, your closing perspectives.
Yeah, thank you very much for this forum. My belief is that it's not everybody that brings transformation in a nation or a continent. It's only few. And I believe in our youth. They are very much innovative, and they are very creative, and they can bring this change to happen. But the only thing is we have to give them access.
Yeah.
I call all political leadership and civil society leadership, and as well as global community, to help our young people to unleash their potential and innovative power so that they can transform Africa. So I think this is the main message I just want to pass in this discussion, and I thank for the organizers giving us this opportunity, and for the African youth.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Mr. Gözel, Your Excellency.
Just one last message I
Please,
want to say.
please.
The field of agriculture, the new agriculture, is infinite. You can talk about soil health. That itself is a science, an infinite science, an opportunity to do business. You can talk about pesticides, the modern pesticides. There are now new pesticides that are not broad spectrum. They are narrow and target a specific agent that it wants to destroy and not kill the whole environment. There is drones, there is precision farming, there is fintech, there is blockchain. So it is a whole economy. Really, the sky is the limit. That's the message I want to give to the youth.
Indeed, and I think it allows me to reflect as we close that His Excellency has rightly said, the African youth want to work. They are capable. They want. We need the jobs in Africa, and the opportunities are there. But we do need businesses to come and give those opportunities, not take those opportunities, as you said, Mr. Gözel. And by the initiatives of paying it forwards, helping people understand where agriculture has moved, for example. From my personal experience, so just to give a quick anecdote, I know we've only got a couple of minutes left. I lived in a subsistence farming community in Uganda about 20 years ago. And they focused on growing what were called Victoria potatoes. Now, everyone in the village and the villages surrounding went to harvest at the same time. The day they went to harvest, the cost of potatoes collapsed. Absolutely collapsed, because everyone was selling potatoes that day. However, what I did was I built a cooperative, a store for the community. And I said, at the next harvest, you're not going to market, you're going to put it in store. And the community were up in arms. They said, we need the money. Even though it was tiny, it was minuscule. They needed that cash because the poverty was so great. So what I did was I paid that community for the cost of the potatoes they get at market. And I said, in 6 months' time, when no one else got potatoes at market, you then go and sell them and you pay me back. 6 months later, they went to market, sold them for 10 times more than they would have had they just gone to market. And I broke the cycle. They were now selling their potatoes 6 months later than everyone else. Of course, I didn't ask for the money back when I paid for the potatoes initially. So by businesses going in and just disrupting the cycle a bit with visionaries like His Excellency, creating the environment for the people of Africa, the youth of Africa, to seize those opportunities, the world will become a far cleaner place for us all to live in, but most importantly, a more prosperous place for us all to enjoy. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining this conversation. I want to thank you so much, Mr. Gözel, and Your Excellency, for taking the time in your extremely busy diaries to be here. For those of you that are online that have joined late, this is recorded. You'll be able to log back in and watch it later with snippets. It is well worth the conversation, but most importantly, I feel in this hour, we are going to continue to support driving change in the parts of the world that need it most. So thank you to you both for that.